Welcome to Nation. I'm Karen Pugliese. In Minneapolis this winter, federal immigration raids have ignited protests and deep fear, including in Indigenous neighborhoods. Within days, ICE agents fatally shot two non-Native people and wounded another outside his home. Native residents, including enrolled tribal citizens, have also reported being stopped and detained during the operations. Robert Lilligren is president and CEO of the Native American Community and Development Institute. Based along Minneapolis's historic Native cultural corridor on Franklin Avenue, he says he believes ICE is targeting Indigenous people. He joins me now. Welcome, Robert.
Thanks for having me here, Karen. It's good to get this story out. I appreciate your interest.
So, we were talking, and you told me Minneapolis is actually one of the most densely populated urban Native populations in the United States. So, can you describe just that area along Franklin Avenue and what it represents historically and who lives there?
Sure. So we call this part of East Franklin Avenue. It's a major east-west thoroughfare just south of downtown Minneapolis. We call it the American Indian Cultural Corridor because of the density of Native population, Native businesses, Native organizations, tribal offices. And it's been that way for decades, for probably over half a century. After relocation here in this country, it just became an area where a lot of Native people came together. There's 150 tribes represented in the Twin Cities. Most of the Native serving organizations right here in the area serve somewhere around 40 different tribal citizens. And because of a really important residential presence here called Little Earth of United Tribes, the Native identity has really held and it's recognized broadly. And we're a fairly small percentage of the population here in Minneapolis, but we really can claim this geography as ours.
Mm, that's interesting. We don't usually see that in Canada unless it's like formerly an urban reservation. Why did so much of the attention, like the tension, unfold there?
Yeah, well, I'll just point out, Karen, it's the same in the US. It's really rare for a geography to be so identified with the Native community. And so to us, that's a huge asset, right? And I think one of the reasons there's been so much federal enforcement focused here is because we share this geography with a lot of new arrival communities, immigrant communities, refugees and asylees. And so we all are co-located here. And I think that's part of it, that we're just in the same space. And a lot of Native people present very brown-skinned, and so this feels like a general attack on brown-skinned people here. But also there is a sense, to me anyway, that there is a target on Native and Indigenous people here.
And why would they be targeting Indigenous people? Indigenous people are not, this is supposed to be a move about immigration. Indigenous people are
Right.
certainly not immigrants.
Right. I think you could argue we're the furthest thing from immigrants here in this country, right? And I think that would be a good question for this federal administration. Why are you targeting Native people? I have my theories and I'm happy to share them. I think this whole effort is an attack on sovereignty. So for Native people, it's on both our sovereignty and our sovereign lands. And I'll note that none of Minneapolis is considered sovereign Native land, but we do carry our sovereign rights with us and we walk in our sovereignty here. So I feel like there's a focus on that. There's something that the federal administration, ICE, and Customs and Border Patrol really want to focus on. And I would note that it's an attack on the sovereignty of our entire state of Minnesota.
Yeah, there is that. There's also, a few other things. There's been a ramp up of ICE agents, and the training's been cut in half. And there was also a report up here in Canada where people were looking at the recruitment, and they saw that there were a lot of like white supremacist memes used in the recruitment. Have you heard anything about those things being a factor?
I've heard the exact same things, Karen, and it's not. I would be surprised if the training has only been cut in half from what I've heard. And to be really clear, I don't have sources on this, but the training is much more abridged than just being cut in half. That recruitment has focused on people who carry white supremacist beliefs, even if they're not white. The feel here on the ground is that these people are not very well trained, and that they're people who have a passion for doing this kind of violent intervention.
So a few weeks ago, just around the times that the shootings happened, speaking of violence, we saw a lot of protesters out in the streets, a lot of whistleblowing, a lot of, ICE agents very present. And now Trump is saying that he's going to withdraw from Minneapolis. Are things better?
Not really. It doesn't feel better. And there was the announced drawdown, maybe 2 weeks ago now, of 700 officers. We have a total of somewhere around 3,000 here. Normal presence of ICE and Border Patrol here is 150 agents. And when that first drawdown of 700 happened, it actually started to feel more brutal and more violent here in the Twin Cities, and especially in our area of Minneapolis. It doesn't really feel that different. Most of us here have a wait and see attitude. I'll believe it when I see it. I don't think anyone here believes it's going to go back to the way it was. But if we can just find a way to exist in a new normal, I think a lot of us would be really relieved.
Mm. And tell me a little bit more about like how Indigenous grassroots activists are being involved in what's going on there.
Oh, in so many ways, Karen, and it's just been really rewarding to see this. And I will just note, for Native people, being under attack by our federal government is a very familiar feeling. For the tale as old as this country, right? And then I would note that the American Indian movement, for example, is founded right here, just a short distance from where I'm sitting right now. So when this happened, and when Renee Good was murdered, we just jumped into action, right? We were ready. And groups like Indigenous Protector Movement, American Indian Movement, Many Shield Society, Women's Warrior Society, and others all came together. The Native organizations here organized under the umbrella of a 50 plus year leadership circle called the Metropolitan Urban Indian Directors. All of the Metropolitan Urban Indian Directors, or MUD as we call them, have stepped forward. We're making sure people are fed, housed, safe, and just each using our resources in a coordinated fashion to care for our Native relatives and our non-Native neighbors.
And what's the emotional impact on elders and young people, particularly who are witnessing this right now?
Karen, it is really hard, and people are determined to remain peaceful, and the Indigenous community prayerful, centering ceremony. There's a lot of ceremony going on all around us right now, and we're not going to turn violent because we understand that would be catastrophic.
And what's the feeling there? Are people feeling safe? Are you feeling safe?
I feel safe here right now because I'm surrounded by the protector movement, but in general, no.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for talking to me today, Robert.
My pleasure. Thanks, Karen.
Now, coming up after the break, APTN reporter Savannah Craig and her cameraman Jeff Dorn have been on the ground talking to Indigenous people who have been patrolling the areas of Minneapolis. And we're going to talk to them. Stick around. Welcome back. ICE is still incarcerating about 70,000 people on any given night across more than 200 detention facilities in the U.S., nearly double last year's numbers. While Donald Trump has said officers will be withdrawn from Minnesota, raids are continuing for now, and Native people are being caught up in them, including at least 4 members of the Oglala Sioux tribe and 1 Dakota woman. Sophie Watso, a Dakota woman, was held for more than 48 hours at Fort Snelling, the same site where her ancestors were imprisoned after the U.S.-Dakota War of 1862. Reporter Savannah Craig joins me now. Savannah, I see you're out there on the ground in Minnesota. Tell me where you are. What's behind you?
Yes, so we're at Fort Snelling. Specifically behind me over here is the Whipple Detention Center. Just as you mentioned, this is where Sophie Watso was held, and behind me, we can see some ICE officers coming in and out, and on this side, there's actually a protest that's set up against ICE.
So can you walk us through what happened that day when Sophie Watsa was detained?
Why she arrested?
So I spoke with Sophie a few days ago, and she had told me that she was driving in Minneapolis, and she came across some ICE officers while she was in her car, and typically, as many do in Minneapolis, when they see ICE, they start blowing whistles. They start drawing attention to the fact that ICE is around so that people should be precautious. Sophie said that she was in her car behind these officers, and she was blowing her whistle. And it was at that time that officers came to Sophie and said that she was interfering with their work. And she said that there was an exchange between some of the agents, and they had decided to detain her.
And they ripped my dog from my arms and put me in a vehicle by my neck, trying to get me to sit down. And on my way being transferred to Fort Snelling, I sang a prayer song. The prayer is asking for help, expressing my will to live. And I knew that my ancestors were where I was going at Fort Snelling. And so I wanted to pray to them, and I wanted to greet them in a good way. And I really, really needed them to hear me. And I know that they did.
Yeah, we've heard a lot of stories about ICE overstepping and becoming violent. What we don't know is a lot about what's happening inside ICE detention camps, because the Department of Homeland Security has limited oversight. ICE is refusing to grant members of Congress access, reporters aren't able to get in. Amnesty International did get inside what's known as Alligator Alcatraz, a tent detention facility in Florida, and they documented things like overflowing toilets with fecal matter seeping into sleeping areas, limited access to showers, constant exposures to insects without protection, lights kept on 24 hours a day, poor quality food and water, and a lack of privacy, including cameras positioned above toilets. So we're seeing the building there from the outside. What are there? Is that a warehouse? What kind of building is that?
I spoke with Sophie about some of the things that she saw when she was inside of this detention center, and she said that she was put in a room alone only with one other woman. She said that this woman was a U.S. citizen herself. Sophie said that she only saw other people, other families, when she left the room, which was only to go to the bathroom. She said that she would be shackled, brought along these halls by ICE agents, and it was there that she saw inside of other rooms that she said were completely filled with people. She said that she assumed that these rooms were for people who were undocumented, non-U.S. citizens, and from what she described, she said it was a very traumatic thing to experience and troubling things to see.
She also said she was denied access from a lawyer. Is that consistent with what advocates are hearing from others detained in Minnesota?
Yes, so we actually met with a lawyer Monday morning, our first day in Minneapolis, that said that a lot of people are being denied proper rights. Some people are being denied a phone call. Sophie herself said that she was denied a phone call. She said that ICE agents actually said that she refused a phone call, but she said that this was not true. So unfortunately, we are seeing a denial of rights in these detention centers.
Yeah, and I feel like it's important to point out at this point that ICE agents have been caught many times now lying about events on the ground that have been proven through eyewitnesses, through videotape of not being true. So it just makes it puts the balance of evidence that's much more on the side of somebody who's complaining about the ICE agents that we know that they've lied in the past. I'm wondering for Sophie just how she's been affected by this psychologically and what's happened to her sense of safety, her ability to move through the city, her mental health since being held.
She spoke about how she felt when she was being arrested, during her detention. But during my conversation with Sophie, I could tell she was really, really traumatized by the experience. It almost seemed that as she was recounting her time in detention, recounting her arrest, that that it was almost like reliving the experience. I could see her lips were trembling as she was explaining this to me, and this is really what I could tell from the interview that I had with Sophie.
Okay, thank you so much, Savannah. Please stay there, and please stick around if you're watching, because we are going to be back after the break, and we're going to talk about what Indigenous people are doing and how they're organizing on the ground in Minnesota. Welcome back. Well, federal officials say the enforcement surge is winding down in Minneapolis. Indigenous residents are still organizing on the ground. From patrols along Franklin Avenue to monitoring ICE activity in real time, community members say they're stepping in where they feel institutions have failed them. Reporter Savannah Craig has been out with Indigenous patrols and has visited the camp described in recent reporting. She joins me now. Savannah, I'm going to ask you about organizing on the ground, but first, we just saw a family being released out of the ICE facility. Is that something that you're seeing a lot of?
It's actually the first time I've seen this. We were here just the other day, and it was in the afternoon, and it was more active actually on the protest side, where we saw many more people with mics shouting at agents that were coming in and out through cars just from this building right here. And this is the first time that I've actually seen families leaving the building right here. Actually, as I was speaking with you earlier, a woman just passed me. A blanket was covering her head, and she had open-toed shoes on. So these people are leaving this building. They're unfortunately not dressed properly, as they were taken and the clothes, the belongings that they had when they were arrested. Something I'm also hearing from people on the ground is that some people are actually being released from the detention center in the middle of the night with no phone, with no proper winter wear, and they're just, I guess, expected to make their way home themselves in freezing temperatures. So, as I mentioned, it's the first time I'm seeing this myself, and these people, they look very traumatized.
Okay, Savannah, so I did want to talk to you about the drive along that you were on. What was that about? What are people watching for?
So what I was told that they're looking out for is they're looking out for cars with blacked out windows, cars with either no plates or plates from out of states. And essentially how it operates, at least with one of the groups that I did a ride along with, is that they are on a phone call, a live phone call through an encrypted app called Signal, where other patrollers are on the chat live as well. And there are people that are running these plates themselves, seeing if this is possibly suspicious activity, and then deciding whether this is an ICE agent or not. And then they will notify people in the community, okay, ICE spotted here. So whether that be people just be precautious, or they actually come out and blow their whistle and essentially try to draw attention to the fact that ICE is there and intentionally push them out of the neighborhood.
Why are Indigenous people involved in this? It doesn't seem to, on the surface, have anything to do with Indigenous people.
Well, Karen, a lot of Indigenous people are being detained and taken by ICE. You may not see this being covered as predominantly in national news in the U.S. or international news, but this is a big story here. This is a big concern for the community. So essentially, people who are on these patrols, they're looking out for the bigger community of Minneapolis, whether they're Indigenous, they're white, they're Latino, Latina, any race. They're looking out for their neighbors, their community members, but specifically for Indigenous people, they're also looking out for their families, for their own communities. As they say, they have a long history of experience with police brutality and mistrust towards officers. So this is them sort of taking charge and trying to protect their own community. As one of the patrollers told me the other day, it's he said that it's weird to be policing police, but he said this is what they need to do to keep their community safe. And another thing the patrollers do is if someone is taken by ICE, which in many cases, they're not allowed to notify their family that they are taken. Their family, they may not show up home, they may not show up to work. People don't know where they are. So something these patrollers are doing with knowing who the community members are and with knowing who these people are in their community, if they see someone being taken, they can notify their family, and then their family can try and find what detention center they're in, get them the support that they need. So this is sort of, I guess, a big part of aid in helping people who are being detained on the ground.
And then after spending so much time on the ground, what struck you most so far?
Yeah, that's a good question, Karen. It's really hard to pick one thing. I mean, just now, even seeing the families released is a big part of it. But I think it's just being here and seeing people's emotions. Even though there are less ICE agents on the ground, even if their operations may be slowing down, the trauma is still going to be there. People are still afraid. Some people are saying, even if you don't leave your house, you don't still hear the whistles. They're saying they still hear them in their heads. They're still driving around in fear, sort of scanning plates, looking for blacked out windows. The impacts of Operation Metro Surge are going to be felt here in Minneapolis for a long time, Karen.
Yeah, I mean, I think even I, watching it from a distance, watching police move in, ICE officers move in like that, what was going through my mind were things I've seen at Wet'suwet'en, at Standing Rock, at Elsipogtog, right? We like, it does look similar in a way, no matter who it's happening to. And speaking of that, I'd like to ask if your camera operator, Jeff, could kind of step into the shot and join you for a moment. I've got a question for you both, actually. So can I ask you, as the camera operator, just what it's like for you to be out there? Because carrying one of those big cameras can really make you a target in the crowd. And yeah, I mean, you're shooting ICE officers who have been violent. You're getting into the protests. How are you feeling about it? Are you feeling safe?
I guess for me, we haven't had a huge interaction with ICE. We've seen them, we've seen the results in the community of what's going on. But as far as protests, the protests that we have been at, the one that we were on President's Day, the people were very open, welcoming. We've had a little bit of aggression from the protesters, but not really from the officers. The local police here have been more than accommodating to us. They don't seem to be aggressive towards us, but the people here seem to be able to do a very strong passive resistance.
Okay, well, I want to thank you both, and both of you, I'm glad you're feeling safe. Please stay safe out there.
Thank you.
Thank you, Karen.
And that's our Nation to Nation for this week. We will be back next week. If you missed any part of the show today, you can, of course, catch it as a podcast on aptn-nationalnews.ca/podcasts. And also, did you know APTN's a charity? If you want to know how to support us, you can go to that same website and find out how you can keep us broadcasting shows like this one. Thank you so much, and I'll see you next week.